Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to the Cooper Lyden is Alone podcast. I think this is episode 16. This is going to be an audio only episode because I am sick and I'm not going to set up an entire set just to be sick in front of the camera. Because the curtains and the table that I use, it's not there all the time, you guys. I gotta set it up every single episode. I don't have a studio, which means every time I record, for the love of the game and for pageantry and, the idea of podcasting and giving people a show, I set up curtains and a desk and most recently a conch shell. But with those curtains, you realize they're not hanging all the time. I got to fold them up, which means every single week I got to iron them. Well, I don't iron them. I actually steam them. I have a steamer. I hang them up, and I steam them. And that is the weirdest part of the whole process. It's so... Every time I'm steaming these curtains, I'm always like, there's no way that this makes the podcast better. There's absolutely no way that this is adding anything to the... If anything, I should leave the curtains wrinkled so then people could watch it and there would immediately be something engaging about what they're seeing. They'd be like, oh, this guy's a mess. I don't know, maybe that could be part of the bit. This episode, I'm just in my bed. So if you hear rustling, that's the bed. And, I was thinking film the bed. It's been done by some of the greats, Tim Dillon, Shane Gillis, they've podcasted from bed. It's been done before, but I didn't need to film it. I'm in my room. I'm not in a hotel. You don't need to see this. And now we're free, where I'm not worried about what you think I look like. I'm not worried about your judgment of my appearance. I'm orating to you the same way that Roosevelt would in a fireside chat. You know what I mean? Me on my bed, roadcaster on the bed, holding a microphone. I mean, it is, I do feel like a president right now. The fireside chats were filmed, though. I'm pretty sure they had to be because that was the whole thing, is that he was next to a fireplace. But they probably had it also on the radio. It is funny to imagine a president giving out messages like this, though. I mean, it's had to have happened a couple times where they just needed his voice and he's in bed and they're like, Nixon, can you just don't worry. They're not going to see you. Just talk into the mic. Tell them you're alive and that you're going to find the guy that shot you. And you're tough now. I think honestly, this is really just proving my point, because I think after Nixon got shot, they, propped him up on Air Force One and had him give a speech of some kind. Just to say, hey, that guy that tried to murder me didn't murder me. So honestly, I should be sitting in my chair right now with the curtain behind me. I honestly have no reason. Nixon was shot and did it. I didn't really expect me talking about this being an audio-only episode to kind of end up with me praising Nixon, but if I'm right about that story, which I think I might be, then he is beating me in this situation. And honestly, beating me in most situations. I mean, in terms of being a good person, I feel like he's lost, but I still have a lot more life left to live. And he was a politician after he was an actor and stuff. So if this comedy stuff goes well and I'm able to build a career, I could still parlay it into... Wait, now we're talking about Reagan. Oh my God, guys. I've been talking about Reagan this whole time. If you came here for American political history, you came to the wrong place. You didn't come to the 100% wrong place, because some of the things I'm saying are based in fact, but they're not. You would fail the test. if they're asking you what president got shot and then they put him on TV after and they were like, talk and tell everybody you're okay, you probably would have failed that test because you would have said Nixon for the last couple minutes. My point is, after a hopefully successful career in entertainment, I could still have time to start the crack epidemic and lead a pandemic of negligence and AIDS and be responsible for the deaths of so many people. That's possible. So I don't know. I mean, that's what this whole no video thing is teaching me, that there's kind of no end to my imagination and the bounds to which I can reach for the stars, you know what I mean? And really give something people to hold on to, you know? Because, like, you know, right now, you're in your car listening to this, and you're listening to it because you know me personally. At this point in the podcast, you probably know me. Sam, hope it's a good day at work, you know? Chances are he's hearing that. And I say that because chances are not a lot of other people are hearing it. My point is, if you're listening to this, you've probably met me in person. You've probably met me in person. You're listening to this podcast kind of out of the niceness of your heart, but also it's episode 16. If you're listening this deep into this, there's still something that's caught you, which means there's a couple things. You know me. You like me enough to listen. And you've liked enough to keep listening, which is how a lot of great men have started. At one point, Lenin was just gabbing, you know? He was just shooting the shit. He was just saying, man, fuck work. You know? One day, he was at lunch, and he was like, what if we fucking killed our boss? And everybody was like, Joseph, you're crazy. You're always crazy. That's why we love you, you know? And then one day Joseph was like, I think we should storm the Capitol. Which they did. And I think it's funny to use storm the Capitol now in any other situation. But you get the point. We could start a movement here. You know what I mean? First, I would have to come up with a mission statement and an idea of what I want to do. But also, those aspects of the revolution turn out to not be that important as long as the people who are a part of the revolution are feeling positive about what they're doing. The exact ideology itself, what you want to get done in the world, your concrete efficacy, is not important when it comes to being a spiritual or even sometimes political leader. What matters the most is vibes. Okay? What did Donald Trump want to do? Nobody really knows, you know? The word jobs was thrown around a lot, but nobody was really sure. But he got people jacked up. It's the same with Reagan. It's the same with every, you know? Even Obama. What did Obama want to do? Hope. Even hope, that's not a plan. That is a current state of being. That sounds like the future will be good. I think that's great, but the populace is supposed to have hope, not the president's supposed to have a plan. Looking back, it's a kind of wild thing to run on. That you're the guy that's going to lead, and everybody's like, what do you got? And you're like, I'm feeling good about it. I'm pretty optimistic. I'm feeling hopeful. And everybody's like, okay. Is that because you have a plan, or you just, he's like, no, I'm in a good mood. And I think we could be in a good mood for the next day. And that's what happened, is everybody, all the Democrats, they were in a pretty good mood for those 8 years, and they kind of ignored the fact that the guy that we loved was dropping a heinous amount of bombs. Because that's what he wanted to do. And that's fine. That was his interest. Personally, not my interest. Obama's interest was dropping bombs. Maybe to make money because the guys that make the bombs wanted him to drop the bombs. Who knows? The point is, his mission statement was hope. It's very vague. make America great again. Very vague. Did he do it? I don't think so. But it got people going. So, I don't know. I guess, if anything, I should get a slogan. Because I need a vibe of some kind, At the state in our country now, we tried hope. It, felt good for half the country for a while, but really resulted in quite a backlash. So then Make America Great Again. Also, kind of a hope-filled, that's essentially hope again. Make it great. We hope we can make it great again. I guess Trump is more like, we're sure we'll make, but it's the same thing. We're feeling good about it. I'm thinking, this is not necessarily my campaign. This is for my podcast that becomes sort of a weekly oral newsletter and then turns into, sort of the garner, trying to beget a revolution. I'm not really going the classic political route, but I would like to lead the country, but it's starting here. So I'm thinking, not hope, not make it great again. I'm just thinking everything is great right now. Because everything's perception. And so the whole thing I'm running on is the country is actually killing it. And if you tell enough people that, then they'll keep eating the food that they have, and they'll keep watching the TV that they have. And if they believe enough that everything's great right now, then the vibes will be better. Because right now the Democrats are sort of like, Democrats and Republicans are both like, everything's fucked right now. And then they each have their own way of pretending to deal with it, which is either like making a bunch of transphobic memes on Facebook and, like running up the Capitol steps and getting pushed over or whatever. They're like, it's fucked, but we're doing all we can, and that's how they get appeased. And the Democrats are like, we're going to go online and we're going to like call Chrissy Teigen a capitalist or something, and then they're doing all they can, they get appeased. I'm done with that. I'm done saying, there's nothing to fix. Everything is fine. And when people ask questions, we just go, we said everything's fine. You are bumming us out. We go, everybody that's been trying to change stuff, whether it's, Capitol stormers or climate change, but not to equate them. Climate change, I think, are obviously doing actual work, and they should not be equated with I'm not saying, a lot of people now are saying the Capitol stormers are the same as the climate scientists, and they're not. My point is, anybody that gives a fuck about anything, whether they're the dumbest version of that, which is running into the Capitol, or the smartest version of just being a researcher or something, whoever gives a fuck, they're out of style. We're not, it's not, don't worry, it's not Stalin, nobody's dying, but they're just out of style. The new thing now is everything is fine. I'm just selling an ideology of, let's paint the grass green. Even if it's dying because there's no water in California, let's put on our glasses, rose-colored glasses, and let's look out at the fields and say, isn't it beautiful? And, maybe you're saying, well, Cooper, that reality is going to be shattered when, climate change wreaks havoc and, your neglect of poverty overflows into the streets, whatever. The thing is, all of that stuff sounds like it takes longer than 8 years. And in the current democratic system of America, I'm not going to be able to lead for longer than 8 years anyway. So, it's another solid 8 years. And maybe I'll even sell it that way. I'll say, listen, would you guys like to lie to yourselves for 8 years and just kind of tell yourselves that everything is okay? And maybe if I was upfront about it, people would want, because that's kind of what we did. The Democrats got to do with Obama, and then everything was not okay. And then the Trump people, you call them Republicans, but it feels rude to Republicans. They got to have fun for 8 years and believe that everything was okay So now, I don't know, we could have a guy that's completely apolitical, and he's like, all of your problems you don't see in your daily life because you're Americans, and you're, like the people on the news, poor people see terrible shit in their daily life all the time. You can't lie to them. We're lying to rich people. We're lying to the voters. Just go, hey, climate change, pause for 8 years. You know what I mean? For the Republicans, hey, pause. No more crime for 8 years. Because all these rich people live in rich fucking communities. Gated communities. Or if anybody who didn't live there would come in and get shot. And then they're always running around. They're like, crime is terrible. Crime. Just tell them, why aren't we lying to these people? They don't care. They're not doing anything. Crime needs to be stopped with social welfare. You need to give people options to improve their life so a person can be born into a world where they'll always have food and health care and access to education. We don't do that. We don't do any of that. And then all these rich people in communities that never have any crime read an article that goes, the crime in this city is terrible, and then they start voting about it, and they just vote to increase police funding in places they're never going to be in. Let's just lie to these people, and they'll stop giving the police so much money. This podcast, which is now also reflective of the ideals of the regime that I'm trying to... So anything I say on this podcast are the ideals of the regime. This regime, yes, believes in not media censorship, but complete and utter media control. And that involves lying to certain people who I think should calm down. School shootings, no more reporting on it. The only way you know about a school shooting is if you are at the school. We put it on the news all the time, and it doesn't fix anything, and it just gives the NRA more talking points, and it just leads to an increase of a bunch of things that I personally don't agree with. I find that a lot of these school shootings, when publicized, lead to a lot of pointless debate, and then usually for a lot of people in America, it leads them to want to give the cops a bunch more money, even though sometimes in those situations the cops don't do a fucking thing. So, school shootings, the 8 years that I'm in office, they don't happen. And you can Google it. Nobody said you can't Google. That's the thing with this regime. You're not going to see some stuff on the news, but nobody said you couldn't Google, okay? You want to Google the crime rate? Google the crime rate. You want to Google how many school shootings have been going on in America? Google it. But you're not going to see it on the news, okay? It's no bummer news, okay? We'll tell you when taxes go down. We're not telling you when they go up. We'll tell you when they go down. And we're not going to tell you what the tax percentage is. You just look at your check and you go, that's how much I made. Seems like things have changed a lot in the, And any plans we have, you won't even... How about that? How about this? What if stuff just showed up? Because you know how you go in the news and you hear, like, the president, he's like, there's going to be so many more bridges in this country, you're not going to believe how many bridges are going to be in this country. There's going to be so many bridges. And then you walk around and you're like, Joe, I saw one bridge in Los Angeles. This is a major city. We got a lot of waterways. Debatable. I don't know if that's true. We got a lot of waterways that I would like to cross horizontally, and I can't. And I would if I had all these bridges you promised. So this time, if you notice more buses, then we did it. Then we improved public transportation. If you notice that now LA has its rail car system back and it's working perfectly. It's cut down on traffic by 20%. That's just something you notice. Okay? I'm not going to tell you 3 years in advance so everybody can get mad or happy or show any emotion. A bunch of groups can form. Shit is just going to show up. Okay? If you walk into any business and you're over the age of 21 and they hand you a small airplane-sized bottle of Jack Daniels, as is mandated by the government, just accept that that's a thing that happens now, okay? Don't go online. You hear that fart? That's what the bedtime pod is all about. If I had the video on me, I would have thought, let's try and keep it clean. No, this isn't even a podcast. You're just in my mind now. But that's what it's all about. It's the hey, maybe some stuff will happen. What do I promise in my campaign? Change. With a little caveat, which is that change is always inevitable. And that change may or may not be from me. As a president, I can guarantee the next 8 years, your life is going to change drastically. You're 10 now, you're going to be 18. Huge change. 20, you're going to be 28. Okay? Huge change. 80, you're going to die. You're not going to make it to the end of my presidency. There will be change. Will I be able to implement any of my own ideas over the next 8 years? Shut up. Stop worrying about that. It's not what you're voting for. You're voting for vast media suppression and altering. Okay? You're voting for fun. You can vote on things that you want us to lie about. We'll put it on the ballot. We'll say, do you want us to lie about the amount of pee at a water park per fluid ounce? Do you want us to lie about the amount of urine that is in the water as you go down the lazy river? You can vote yes or no. And if you vote yes, then we'll lie. We'll say any number you want. We can do that. We can make that change. And guess what? Guess what is the most exciting part about something like I just mentioned about voting on lies? Is that even 6 months after the vote, you'll forget that you voted. And how often are you even checking how much pee is in water park water? Never. So let's say another 8 years down the line, you go online, you're curious for some reason, you check, how much pee is at Hurricane Harbor, Six Flags, Santa Clarita, California? How much pee is in that water per fluid ounce? You look it up, it says it's clear. You go, wow, that's amazing. And you forget that you ever voted on that. Or you remember and you go, oh, wait, I voted to lie. And then you go, is that still a thing? Did that end when he went out of office? You don't know. You believe what you want to believe, which is that there's no pee in that water. We could get done with no president has ever been able to get done. Just get the pee out of water parks with only the power of positive thinking. And that, folks, I mean, that's what I'm selling. I'm selling the power of positive thinking, I feel like you could get away with this in the 60s. And, in the 60s, it's just like whoever wanted to speak was the one that was speaking. Now it's everybody speaking at the same time, But if I was doing this same thing in the 60s, like if I just going around, I recorded myself speaking for an hour. I put it on a cassette tape, like a indigo green cassette tape, Gave it out to people. They'd be like, "This man is a guru. This man is a genius. Only a genius would talk by himself for this long. He must have something to say. And I could go on and the track would start, or maybe it's on a record or an 8-track, whatever your preferred older version of sound is. And there's a little, a little static at the beginning. And then I just come in and I'm like, there is a mind of one mind that is comprised of many, and in which you are a part of. A puzzle of consciousness, an ever-flowing landscape through which rivers of thought and ideology flow, picking up all traces of its land thus traveled. With only a purification of individual thought can we purify the land and the rivers and restore the rolling hills of humanity back to its lush greenery. And all of a sudden, I could have a bunch of white people from America and Britain, not Ireland, they're too smart, but America and Britain, to believe in me. And I could, give myself a fake name. I wouldn't have to have studied Eastern beliefs at all, but I could call myself a Swami of some kind, a guru. And they would take it at face value. I'd start a commune and come and I'd have sex with men's wives. In a matter of months, people had radio shows, but even if they had the technology to podcast, they wouldn't have podcasted because they would have just used it to transmit tapes to get people to a farm, to fuck men's wives. It's the only thing that spiritual leaders in the 60s wanted, was to fuck other men's wives. That's why they did it. They were all bad people. But that's why the 60s was beautiful, is because they were exactly what I have explained for the last 30 minutes. Is just to white people they sold this. To affluent whites. Not poor whites, affluent whites. They sold. Everything was great. Everything was good. I'm bringing that back. And I'm fucking people's wives. Because I'm teaching them about materialism. I tell these men, I'm like, you're so sexist, You possess over your wife so much, You have to let your wife fuck me. And she wants to fuck me because it's the 60s, and I'm the first man she met that doesn't have a job but is rich, and I'm not aggressively calling her a bitch, and that's a first for a lot of women. So they drag the family into this, and now I'm fucking your wife. And we're on a farm, and I just watch Wild Wild Country, so that's why I'm talking about that. If you haven't seen it, you probably. It's a very famous documentary now. Not very, but I think it came out, probably 5 years ago, probably less. And it's about a spiritual group. I don't know if they call themselves a religious group, but a spiritual group run by a man named Rajneesh, later known as Osho. And, they got a meditation that they do, and they believe in sort of somewhat existential. It's a bit of an atheistic thing. It's you're an individual and you're beautiful. You have to awaken. You have to break bounds of society, and it's breaking out of all the bullshit. It was perfect for the 60s. But you can drink, and you can do drugs. You can fuck. You got to remember that when you hear of a cult
It's a group of people, they all wear the same thing. It's a cult. When you hear about a cult, and part of it is you can do anything, and one of the things is you can fuck anybody, you have to remember that means is that the guy that runs that religion, because it's a dude, he's gonna want to fuck your wife. If your wife is attractive, he's gonna want to fuck your wife. And that's the thing, is it's the same rule, with polyamory. Is like, guys will hear like, oh wait, so if we're polyamorous, I can fuck any girl I want. And it's like, sure, but that means any guy that your girlfriend wants to fuck can fuck your girlfriend. So that's a deal you're making. And it's the same with cults, as if their whole thing is free love. The guy that runs that cult's gonna fuck your wife, and you might have to suck his dick. And he's probably not gonna suck your dick, because he acts like he's cool. He's like, oh, I'm bi, but he'll never bottom. And you start to be like, is he trying to assert some sort of superiority over me because he's fucking my ass? And then he's fucking my wife. I'm, starting to feel like it's a bit of a power dynamic that he's the one doing all the fucking. And you bring that up to him, and he's like, why are you so swept up in power dynamics? I'm just asking why I can't ever fuck your ass. Oh, show, But it's a very funny movie. This cult, they started in India, and white people love it because the meditation is, it's you run around and you dance and you scream, and you don't have to just sit and be alone with your thoughts. You get to almost do the opposite. So it doesn't seem like good meditation, but you get to do that. Everybody's fucking naked all the time. You get meals if you stay at the commune, and you can get fucked up and nobody cares. And you just live at a summer camp, but you think that because you're doing all of that and you're an adult, that somehow you've created a society. You haven't. A rich guy set up a summer camp and you decided to live there permanently. So they're all there doing that in India. And then the Indian authorities are not that into it, and he's got to get more room. So he buys all this land in Oregon. The Muddy Ranch or something. Like thousands of acres, like 70,000 acres. And they set up what they call a town. It's not a town. It's a ranch. And then they build a bunch of homes. They do amazing construction work. They build a dam. They are able to farm previously unusable land. They turn a barren area into very lush green in a lot of areas. You're able to farm, and they build this community that they think is beautiful. But also, we should remember, this is not a city. They don't have actual commerce. They're just buying materials and kind of just selling it within themselves. They don't export, or you know what I mean? Like, the city's not making money. Rajneesh is making money. He sells a bunch of books. A bunch of people pay to come live there. But that's not a city. It's a summer camp. So they got a fucking cafe and shit, but they tell themselves that they are building, they have a city now. And they're like, look, we built a city and nobody fucking gets murdered in it. Isn't that amazing? And it's like, your city's existed for 2 months. It's not a city. Nobody's homeless. It's not a city if nobody's homeless here. What does your mayor do? How do your jobs? Do you make money with the job? How does it work, Yeah, they moved in, and there's a small community nearby of 40 people. Antelope, small town, just a bunch of ranchers. And they didn't like all the new people. They got into a big fight. There's a lot of unbought real estate in Antelope, and this group that had so much money was like, well, fuck, we'll just buy all that unbought real estate. So now they kind of owned also this small town that was near the ranch they bought. And it's very funny because there's all these small town Oregon people, all these older, retired white folk, good people. hardworking people who wanted to retire in silence. And now there's a whole fucking, cult that is colonizing their town. And it's very funny to watch a modern colonization. That's sort of what's happening. But it's not a colonization that's through like a military. They're not coming in with guns and shooting these townspeople. They're just having so much more money than them. And they can't do anything. And it's so funny because they're like, we're prideful of our community and we're not going to go anywhere, And it's not like, oh, these people are finally learning their lesson from the Native Americans. Because those fucking people, they didn't steal the land themselves. That land was America when they were born, That land was stolen from the day they were born. But it is just very funny. This whole time, this is like rural Oregon. I wonder where the nearest tribe is. I wonder if the tribe is seeing that go down. Just like, damn. White people are losing their land to Indians from India now? I mean, this is getting funny. This is just getting silly. Yeah, and they all ended up getting fucking arrested and charged with fraud and a bunch of things and a bunch of bad immigration, faking green card marriages and shit like that, and then they ran him out of the country. And those people didn't know what to do. In other news, the Doomsday Clock has been set to 90 seconds to midnight. Just warning everybody, the Doomsday Clock has been set to 90 seconds to midnight. That is huge. I mean, this is some of the biggest news in the last 100 years. You're telling me you're telling me the metaphorical clock made up by a magazine has been set to 90 seconds to midnight. Midnight, of course, being the metaphorical doomsday. I mean, people, this is something that should be on the news. This is something actually happening, isn't it? It's not like this is just some stupid metaphor that we've kept doing ever since 1947. 1947. God, I'm a fan of planes. It's fucking Doomsday Clock. If you don't know, the Doomsday Clock, they invented it in 1947 to warn people about the dangers of like a nuclear fallout or just some way that man is going to end the world. And they use it to remind you that the world is going to end. Has it not dawned on anybody at the Doomsday Clock Foundation that maybe we don't need reminders that the world is going to end? Maybe if you fucking looked around for half a second, you would notice that shit is bad. And it's not it's hit the fan already. There's shit on the ceiling already. What are we doing? Why are you reminding us? It is the most, like, fucking patting itself on the back. Rich people with nothing to do who have never met a regular person in their entire life. Shit that I have ever heard of. You should have seen the fucking video. It's like an arts and crafts. It's a quarter of a clock. It's a pie slice of the top left of a clock. And it's a little hand that is 90 seconds away from midnight. And it's under a curtain. It's under like a shiny red blanket. And there's these fucking idiots that are still dressed like politicians in the 90s, like the pantsuits with the skirt and the tweed. They look like fucking idiots. And they're in like a sound studio or like a press room. And it's under this blanket and they unveil it. And they're like, it's 90 seconds to midnight. And then you hear about the click of a bunch of cameras. Like something has been done before. I did a lot of research on the Doomsday Clock. Not a lot. By a lot, I mean about 5 minutes of reading their about summary. And that was all I needed. It's made up by a scientific magazine, and it is to remind people of the threat of man-made apocalypse. And it's such a good example of just when rich people only talk to themselves, that they're like, it would be good to have some sort of reminder that man is not doing well. And it's like, if you drove down a street that was not in your own rich community, you would see people on that street dying. The streets that you drive on, people live on them and they die on them. And you go back to your home and you draw a clock. And you're like, this will let people know that things are not going well. And it's like, what is it? There's no math to any of what they're saying. They moved it 90. It was 100. Now it's 90 seconds away. They moved it 10 seconds, and that was Russia-Ukraine. That's what that was. That was the Ukraine getting invaded. Was 10 seconds, I guess. Which is like, explain, to show your work. Show your fucking work. And I know that they don't have to because it's a metaphor, but then that's the thing, is if it's a metaphor, then why does it exist? Why am I supposed to take this seriously? If you're saying that Russia-Ukraine equals 10 seconds to death, they're not going to end the world. Nobody gives enough of a fuck about that situation, actually, to end the world. It's pretty clear that nobody's really going to go to war for that. We did go to war for that kind of stuff earlier. We don't go to war for that kind of... We go to war now for selfish reasons. There's, and America is not going to be able to seize the oil from Ukraine because then they would have to fight Russia. And it's not worth it. They don't care. Nobody cares. Stop with the clocks. Nobody asked you to do this clock. Do you realize how, fucked up and in your own community and just rich on, rich people drugs you have to be for a clock, a metaphorical clock, to mean something to you? How little you have to have going on in your life for a clock to mean something. I mean, a doomsday clock is the only kind of person that could work on now is a person that was 20 when the doomsday clock came out, and they were like, oh wow, brothers, we got a band to get, some old dumbass. Or a child. If you've shown a child and you go, this is the doomsday clock, that makes more sense as some sort of parental punishment of you got 90 seconds to go to your room where it's fucking doomsday. What is the doomsday clock doing? Why does it and these people get money. There's money that goes into making this doomsday clock happen. Somehow there's over $1 million that have been invested into the doomsday clock. They're not doing research. What are they doing? Who makes the clock? Is it scientists? So a bunch of scientists do research. They go and they do actual lab research. And then on their day off, they come in and they do an arts and crafts project that bums everybody out. Enough. I mean, if that is not the opposite of the movement that I have described in this episode, then I don't know, there are no doomsday clocks, and everything's fine. Everything is fine. I mean, it's if there's not a better example of how they just want to fucking beat you down. The doomsday clock is not doing anybody any good. All they need is one regular guy in the press conference to make everybody realize how stupid what they're doing is. Just one regular guy who's once they unveil and take away the red carpet from the doomsday clock, they need one guy in the back that's just hey, so what does the 10 seconds mean? And they're like, well, we did that in light of the Russia-Ukraine event. You're like, okay, so how many days is 10 seconds? This is a micro of a long timeline, you mean? Are you saying that you think the world's going to end in 50 years? And they're like, no, it's not even that. It's just a metaphor. And he's like, so it's not, so this relates, there's no, 10 seconds means nothing in life. And they're like, no, it's just a metaphor. he's like, okay, then don't you think it's a little fucked up to put that on the news? Like you're gonna report on a school shooting, and then after that, you're gonna show people a fake clock, and you're gonna say it's 90 seconds until the end of the world. Isn't that kind of fucked up to the modern day, especially American psyche? That like we're constantly bombarded with the fact that things are not going okay, and then these people come in and they say they aim to serve as a reminder that we have things to be worried about. Do you realize there's nothing to be reminded of? That's what's so annoying with this Doomsday Clock, is there's nothing to be reminded of. They come out, people are dying in the streets of Ukraine. They come out and they unveil a clock, and they're like 90 seconds to midnight. And you're like, what the fuck are you guys doing? If you're scientists, get back in the labs. If you're rich people, write some checks to whatever shit you want to fix. I don't know if I agree with it. I'm just saying shut up and just write the check. Stop with the clock. I know things are bad because the clock is like patronized. The clock is rude. The clock is condescending because a clock comes out of nowhere. And by virtue of that, it's a reminder. What it's saying is you've been thinking everything's okay. You have not been focusing on how bad things are. You have been lollygagging, having so much fun. Well, here's a reminder that things are not going okay. And it's like, hey, dumbass, this isn't fun, okay? The anything that's happened in the last 6 years on a global level has not been fun. There has not been something that's happened globally that has been fun in the last 6 years, which is maybe too much to ask. 6 years is a blink of the eye. But my point is, I don't understand. The pandemic didn't break the Doomsday Clock. They didn't see just a broken spirit of an age. You don't have to keep doing stuff. You don't have to continue the tradition of the Doomsday Clock when all it's doing is bumming people out. Last night, there was an earthquake. There were two. It was 3.5 and 4.2. I did not feel that heavy, but, earthquake, now we're fracking. That's making earthquakes even worse. That was probably a natural earthquake, but my point is everything is I feel that earthquake and I go, oh, fuck, we're fucked. This shitty apartment I live in is going to come down because it's not well kept. The people that inspect this building, they don't care. This building's coming down. And then we're fracking, which is fucking up the earth, probably making earthquakes even worse somehow. And then you come out with your clock and you tell me, I know things are bad. I felt the way my building shook. There are people that live outside of my building. They don't live in the building. They live on the street. Stop with the clock. That's what I have to say to the Doomsday Clock people. And I don't know. That's the fucking reason that like Donald Trump won, is people that make the Doomsday Clock. Just people where it's just complete show and it's doom and gloom and they pretend to be on the right side of things and act like they're changing. It's not a radical act to make a fake clock. I can make a fake clock and I can say 90 seconds to Pussytown. How about that? What about that? What if we made the Pussytown clock? Maybe people need that more than anything. People of all walks of life. Doesn't matter if you've ever been to Pussytown. It's exciting that it's 90 seconds away. That would do more good now than the Doomsday Clock. Because the Doomsday Clock it's talking about man-made disaster, too. It's talking about nuclear arms. So it's like, listen, there's some stuff that I can see people like reminding each other about. Like, hey, don't fucking throw litter on the street, whatever. There's stuff that we can as a community do to make the world better. But when they fucking bring up the Doomsday Clock and talk about nuclear arms, because it's not a reminder to the fucking president, it's a reminder to the populace at large, which are not capable of disarming the world's nuclear powers. You come up with a clock and you come out every 6 months and you tell me that I have to take nuclear weapons out of Putin's hands? I got a blue bin, okay? That's as much as I can do. I got which I've heard we're not even really recycling. China won't take it anymore. But my point is, I got the bin. I'm not stopping nukes. It's also just hilarious that the Doomsday Clock is made by us, by Americans, because we invented and are the only ones that have ever dropped nuclear bombs. And it's like, hey guys, maybe if you got rid of the bombs, or hey, what about never invented them? We wouldn't need the clock. You invented this. This clock is a metaphor, which means you invented the clock. You invented it. It didn't have to exist. And even the reason it exists didn't have to exist. It's all just, this is a fake of a fake. Just stop. Tear down the clock. Tear down the Doomsday Clock and replace it with the Pussytown Clock. Or at least replace it with like a Crunchwrap Supreme. Like, you know, it doesn't have to be something as big as Pussytown, but just 90 seconds until you get to eat a Crunchwrap Supreme. Or a bowl of Lay's salt and vinegar chips. 90 seconds till then. Whatever that means to you. That's a fine metaphor. That's fine if it's a metaphor. I am fine if the clock telling me when I'm going to eat chips is just a fun, cute metaphor. I'm not fine if it's doomsday. If you have a doomsday clock, I need that timing to be right. Because the first time that I heard about the Doomsday Clock, I thought it was a real clock, and I had a very confusing 10 seconds where I was like, it's 100 seconds until the world ends? And I was like, when did they get this news? When did I get this news? And then I was like, oh, it's bullshit. And I never looked into it again. But now it's and I was like 10 when this happened, which is not, what if kids hear about the Doomsday Clock? That's mean. We're worried about what kids see. We should be worried about kids hearing about this Doomsday Clock. Do you imagine you're a parent? You're just doing your best. You had a rough day with your kids. They're finally calm, and then all of a sudden it comes on the news, and the guy's like, the Doomsday Clock has been set to 90 seconds. All of a sudden the kid lives in fucking Superman's world. He's dealing with a villain that's about to end the world. He only has 90 seconds to save it. I don't know. 90 seconds again, you're fucking ass beat if you keep making up all these fake goddamn clocks. That's what I'm saying. Trying to protect my family. My fake family that I made up for this scenario. And you're bringing up these goddamn clocks. I don't know. It's the same as, it's like the guy that led the cult in Oregon or the Doomsday Clock. You can worship a master, it can either be a guy that tells you that you can just fuck all the time, or it can be a clock that tells you that you're about to fucking die. Or you could just not, maybe don't always be part of something bigger than yourself. Maybe you're big enough. What about that? What about not something bigger than yourself? What about what is bigger than yourself is already within you because you are made up of the same matter that has been recycled before and over. You know what I mean? It's like what if you're fine? What if you don't need to be part of a great struggle to disarm the world of nuclear weapons? Or to teach everybody that you should be allowed to fuck your wife, Why don't you walk around and just be that? And that's what I'm preaching. And since I'm preaching it, you should follow me, and I'm the leader, and now you worship me. And you see how people do that? You can teach a guy to be an individual, but to follow you. It's crazy. And this isn't funny at all, but this is the kind of podcast that you get when a guy is in bed And you can best believe that I'm talking with my hands, but also on my back. That is a lot of confidence. That is the way that kings who had grapes fed to them spoke. It really is a good feeling, though. Sometimes you should, if you're ever on your bed, just pretend that people are listening and just start talking. Have one knee up, kind of just present your crotch to the world, and just orate the way a king or queen would. It feels good. And this is the beginning of the revolution. I mean, that's what that's what this is. This is radical oration. God, I wish I could actually think like that and believe that. It would just be a wonderful bliss of being the worst guy ever. But I can't. Honestly, I think this is a pretty mid podcast, but there was, some passion involved. When I could add it, listen, I'm trying to promise better health to my listeners because I've been having some trouble with my breathing lately. And it would be very funny if I have a grave disease and I don't know it yet and I'm just talking about it on a podcast. Sadly, this would be my legacy. But that being said, thank you for tuning in. Sorry this episode was late. And I'll see you all soon. I love you so much. Thank you.